don't know if you can see the disgust on my face. The Tom was already on the ground. He was down in there. I guess you can figure out what happened next. Gone. Okay, we're back in the woods today, and I'm going to talk about your private land. What can you do to make improvements? And you probably said, well, man, this thing has been beat to death. This is a dead horse. Leave it alone. But I'm going to throw you a curveball here. I'm going to give you something to think about, and I'm going to try to make it easier for you. You know, as an engineer, we always said make the process as simple as possible. You know, keep it simple. You know, the keep it simple method, KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it simple, stupid. So don't make it so complex. You know, a lot of times, and I got mosquitoes flying around me again, a lot of times, a lot of people want to make this process so complex, but in reality, it's super simple. So basically, you know, I'm on my private land right now, and here's the thing: when you're looking at making improvements to private land, you know, people are talking about, all right, you got to have food, you got to have, you know, early season food, mid season food, late season food, post season food. You got to have plenty of water. You got to have cover. You've got to have food plots. You know, talking about the food again. You got to have a sanctuary area. You got to have all these different things, and it's got to be in the right location. And I may have left out some things, but like I said, I want this video to be something simple, you know, not complex, that makes sense. So that's what we're going to do. So I've got 15 acres here. I can't move my property. Now, if you're out there shopping currently, then strategically you can find areas that are better suited. I'll give you a couple of examples. So years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, if you was looking for some hunting property, you wanted it out in the middle of nowhere. You didn't want it near a suburb. But now we're finding out that these subdivisions have, you know, lot sizes of 1 to 2 acres or bigger, and they don't allow any hunting. Big bucks find out about that. So if you get your property adjacent to those subdivisions, you hunt on your side, make your side more attractive, you can pull the big bucks off the subdivision, right? Can't hunt on the subdivision, but you can hunt on your land. Years ago, you wouldn't have thought about that. City limits, now you got urban hunting. So do you buy your property next to an area that's close to a city? You want to stay out of the city limits, obviously, for tax purposes, but if you got an area that's close to a metropolitan area or a small town or something, you don't have to be a major city, but it can be. You might be in business there. Or you can go back to the old rule of thumb, hey, find me some property way out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe it's adjacent to public land or game lands. And I can pull deer off, or I can hunt my private, and then if I want to, I can just ease up on game lands. A lot of different variables. And like I said, I'm not going to cover them all. But that's if you're buying land now. If you've already got land, can't move it. I can't move my 15. It is what it is, and it's where it's going to be. It's not going to change. So where I'm at is steep elevation. I'm in the mountains. So I've got a main ridge on my property. I've got a west side, I got an east side. And, you know, north-south run, actually the length of the ridge. So in the wintertime or in the fall, I need to realize that the predominant wind is going to be from the north. So I'm always thinking, okay, where do I need to set up my tree stand? I need to be downwind of that. But my property is also surrounded or adjacent to other private land property owners. But in reality, I'm probably only about 200 yards or less from public land, which is really good, okay? I think for my area, because we got about 3,082 acres above me. So I think that's good. I also think it's good that I'm surrounded by private land. So I got a little bit of a mix. But like I said, if you already got your property, forget about the location, forget about the where, all that stuff. It is what it is. Make the best of it. So now, when you got your property, what do you want to do? And as I stated earlier, I like putting mineral licks up. I like it because I enjoy getting in the woods early season. You know, turkey season stopped mid-May, so get back in the woods. That's usually about the time, April, May, when the bucks start growing their antlers. Hey, let's provide some minerals for them. I've never shot a buck over a mineral lick before. That may change this year, I don't know. I typically don't put my stands over the mineral licks. I put them either in front or behind, depending on the wind. But I believe minerals can provide the essentials, the essential nutrients that a deer or a buck needs, and it's does and bucks. I mean, does are dropping fawns in May in my state. I think most states are probably in that May time frame. Some maybe a little later in the far south. So they need the nutrients as well, but I think the bucks can use those or utilize those nutrients for their antler growth. So I do that. So I do the mineral lick. But if you look at my property here, you see a lot of this small vegetation, these small saplings like this. This little small poplar tree here, got a little cherry tree there, got some maples there. What I did several years ago was I had a select cut come in. I didn't want a clear cut, I just wanted a select cut because I had some mass trees in here. And I've got some red oaks, I got one white oak. I definitely flagged that one, didn't want that one cut down because they only produce every other year. Got red oaks in here and got some chestnut oaks, stuff like that for mass. So I've got some good, sometimes the white oaks drop a little early. So you're looking at early to mid-season, pretty much early season, and then mid-season with the other oak trees that are dropping. And then depending on how heavy the mass crop is, they'll last. But whatever your property is, go in and canvass it and take a look at what's your current food situation. Now, I'm gonna throw this out there. If you don't have oak trees, it doesn't matter. If you've got this low story vegetation like this, which is created by doing the select cut, creating openings where the sun can hit the ground, deer have got food. Now, obviously when the acres start dropping somewhere else, yeah, they're gonna be over there too, but early season, they can feed anywhere. That's a big point to remember. So number one, we're talking about location. Your property is where it is. Number two is go in and find, okay, take an inventory. What kind of food sources do you currently have? Write it down. Do you need to make any improvements? Think about it. I mean, obviously, you're not gonna spend hundreds or thousands of dollars. What do I have now? And honestly, I'll throw a little bit of clover, shade tolerant clover, and some of the roads that were cut in when they did the timber. Other than that, I haven't really done that much. Okay, I'll let the select cut take care of everything else, and those road beds are opening up, or openings also. So haven't done anything as far as planting food plots. Several years ago, before I did the select cut, I actually cut out an area with my chainsaw, planted a little food plot there. It didn't do that well. So take an inventory of how much food you got. Then look at the cover you've got. Okay, is it thick? Is it sparse? Mature timber, which is predominantly the situation on a lot of public land, you got a huge canopy, and there's really no sunlight hitting the forest floor, and it's wide open. I mean, you can rifle hunt in there and shoot 100 yards. So take a look at your property. Is it mature timber? Is it immature? Who knows? You may have bought something that was a clear cut, which has got a lot of tonnage per acre as far as that goes. So look at your cover. Like I said, look at the water situation. Now, depending on what you read, and we're going to get into this with maybe a later video, but I'll talk about it just a little bit here. Obviously, white-tailed deer, like all animals and humans, got to have water. But fortunately for them, their food is comprised of 50 to 90% water. So when they eat these plants, it's kind of like us eating an apple, a nice juicy apple, got plenty of water in it. Okay, so they don't need as much water as it's made out to believe. And I'm actually going to do a little test. I'm gonna get me something and I'm gonna put it up here and I'm gonna let rainwater fill it up. Deer don't care if it's a mud hole, stagnant, or running water. If it's there, they'll drink it if they need it. And then we'll just see how many tracks are around it. So that's for a later video. So fortunately, deer, their food is comprised of 50 to 90% water, so they get a lot of their water intake through the plants that they eat. I mean, a lot of these green leaves, things on the ground like that. Whatever it is, they'll eat it. Deer can pretty much eat anything. They're a ruminant, 4-chamber stomach, so you got to take care of your gardens and stuff. I got 2 apple trees I planted down here. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So now we're on water. Probably don't need as much water as you think. A lot of studies show you got to have at least some kind of water source within 1 square mile. So we talked about location, we talked about food, we talked about water, we talked about cover. And like I said, I may not hit all of the items. Your list may be different than mine. But there's one item that we haven't talked about, and I want you to seriously think about it, that if you've got that, or if you create it on your property, you can nail down some of those other elements of making your property better also. Sanctuary. You know, as hunters, we're all after a mature buck. Now, obviously you want to shoot some does, keep the herd balanced, manage the buck-doe ratio. But bottom line for most of us, we're after old mossy horns, right? Create a sanctuary. And I'm gonna walk over here, if I can walk down here without falling real quick. I'm gonna turn around, trying not to make too much noise with my camera here, with my hand. I want you to see how steep this is. Now here's my apple trees. I got fences around both my apple trees, and I strategically got one for early season to drop and one for late season. I'm trying to cover, or mid-season rather. So early September, and then one in that October, November time frame, which is the best time frame in my area with the rut moving, where bucks are getting around, and obviously they can be finding those. I want you to look at this. From that select cut, look how thick that is. That's the sanctuary I've got. And it's not much. I've got 15 acres here. That's probably 5 to 7 acres. So almost half of my property is sanctuary. And I'm on the fringe right here with my mineral licks and my tree stands. I don't go in there, okay, during hunt season. I try to stay out of that area. Create a sanctuary. All right, why is the sanctuary so important, and how can it nail down some of those other property improvements? Well, sanctuary number one is created by cover. That's one of the items we just talked about. Okay, so if you got plenty of cover, you're creating sanctuary. But the way you create a sanctuary is by not going into it. Don't hunt it, just leave it alone. Hunt the fringes of it. Let that buck go in there, bed down, let him get comfortable and be undisturbed. That's what you want. But it provides cover, which is one of the elements we're talking about. Got that one checked off the list. Number two, it provides food. Look at the amount of food that's in there. All those small sapling trees are within reach of a deer. All that low story vegetation on the ground, that's food, natural food. Now it's not a food plot, it's natural food. So we nailed down food. So we got cover, we got food. That's two of the elements we talked about. Number three, water. We talked about that most of the plants that deer eat are comprised of 50 to 90% water. Bang, look at that. All of this vegetation is full of water, so they're getting water. And I'm relatively close to a creek. All right, so we've got three out of those, what, 4 or 5, we said food, we said location, food, water, cover, and sanctuary. So 3 out of those 5 elements are actually nailed down: the food, the water, and the cover. And then when you throw in sanctuary, we're 4 out of 5. So we're 80%. Now the location, like I said, it is what it is. If you're shopping, you can kind of get that dictated depending on your price range. But if you currently have a piece of property, the location is what it is, so just don't think about it. I mean, you got to be cognizant of what's around you and how you can maybe pull deer from other areas. But my number one thing, this is just me, this is one shot tip: create a sanctuary. You create a safe haven for a big buck or a mature buck to come into. You got the sanctuary checked off. It provides plenty of food, it provides plenty of water, and it provides the cover that the buck needs when he's just bedding down. But it's an area you're not going to go into. So now we're at 80% out of those 5 elements that I'll just listed. And you can tell on this logging road, when it came in, I had them cut some roads in specifically. Now I planned out my select cut. I was heavily involved. I didn't just contract it out and walk away. I supervised my own select cut. This is how I want it done. I personally supervised my select cut. You know, a lot of people just contract a forester and walk away from it. But I wanted mine done in a certain way. So I had some roads cut in here in certain areas, and then they actually drug the timber out or pulled it out. So they actually pulled the timber out with a bulldozer. But I've got this sanctuary right through here. Now, obviously, I don't go in it, and that's not to say maybe a neighbor's dog don't go in it, or maybe a neighbor don't, you know, accidentally walk around it. You can post your property. You know, posting's for the honest people, obviously. Hey, it's just a courtesy thing. I'm hunting this myself. Please don't come into it. You're not trying to be unneighborly or anything like that. You're just trying to produce an area that creates a safe haven for mature bucks. That's what we're after. So that gets us started. All right, so now let's kind of summarize. We talked about location, we talked about food, water, cover, and sanctuary. And just to reiterate, to me, sanctuary is number one because it nails down 4 of the other 5 elements I talked about. That gets us at 80% if your location isn't that great. So the other thing we'll talk about is acreage. I got a small piece of land here, but it produces. Okay, it does produce, and it has the potential, I think, of producing even more. So it doesn't matter if you got 2 acres, 15 acres like what I've got here, or 500 acres. It can still produce. The thing about it is, I want you to visualize in your mind a football field. We, playing high school football, I remember that very well. Friday night lights. But a football field is roughly 1 acre. All right, I want you to think about 1 acre and a football field are pretty close to the same. 1 square mile is 640 acres. Why is that important? Well, a lot of studies show that a whitetail's home range is 400 to 800 acres. Now, I don't know if it's that big. It may be. So I like to take the middle. And 640 works out perfect because I can remember that 640 acres is 1 square mile, and that's 640 football fields, which I can visualize in my mind. That's a lot of area. Now, I don't know in the mountain areas, is it more or less, based on the topography or not, but that helps you visualize what you're trying to achieve. So when you look at the surrounding properties or the properties that you're adjacent to, think about that 640 rule that I'm just talking about. 640 acres is 1 square mile. It's 640 football fields, which allows you to visualize it. And then that way you can kind of plan your property out. So this is our first series on making your property better, and I covered a lot of things. Probably do maybe 1 or 2 more videos on what I'm trying to do here. Maybe give you guys a few more tips, but try to get your work done early. That way, toward the middle part of August, or first or second week in August, you're done. You can stay out, and then you can get your tree stand set up, like I said, on these perimeters. And that's all I'm doing. I'm hunting the perimeter of what I call my sanctuary. It's super steep, super thick, and I don't hang a tree stand in there. So the bucks can go in there in bed, and they get it all to themselves. So that's going to conclude today's video. I hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking more about getting your property ready, and we're going to talk about a lot more topics because, like I said on my video short, if you missed that, the countdown has begun. It's less than 60 days in my home state for the opening day of deer season. So let's get ready. We'll see you next time.